Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for More Survivalists, in this case talking about ice packs. Now, if you've been following my channel for some time now, you notice I cover a wide variety of topics. One day I'm talking about knives, doing knives reviews, then I'm talking about Glocks like in my previous video, talking about self-defense. One day I'm showing how to make knots and cords and such. That basically is because of my idea of the modern survival mindset. I believe that you should be able to do lots of these things. You should be able, maybe not the word self-reliant implies more like a homestead and living off the land, that sort of thing. It's kind of confusing, even though there is some of that to it. I think that the key word for me is being able to cope. Cope would be the word I'd use. Coping with problems. Coming from my background, in my life in Argentina after the economic collapse, having seen some of the safety nets taken for granted in many first world countries, I understand that the police may not always be there, and same for medical services. You know, in Argentina, if you need a police, they may be coming or not. In general, you need to be able to cope yourself. I understand that's the case in many first world countries as well, but as things start getting worse, it's even more important. So that quickly takes us to this video, instant ice packs. It is one of those things that you will rarely find in commercially available first aid kits like this one, either because things are too expensive or they are complicated or even impossible for them to include. There are some things that you will not find in these kits. For example, antibiotics, because in most countries you need a doctor's order for that, you will not find it. And that's definitely one of the first things you should be adding to these commercial first aid kits. Because antibiotics, and one day we're going to be talking a little bit more about them and such, but it's the kind of thing that saves your life very often, and it's underrated. It's not given the importance it requires for first aid kits during emergencies, during scenarios where you will not have proper medical care available. In some other videos I talked about Celox. Some experts consider that it's overrated, that it's only used for when you cannot stop bleeding with direct pressure. Now, in places where people do get shot and do get hurt and stabbed pretty often because of the social violence experience, these things are important. These kind of things are important to have, you know. Instant ice packs. If you're not familiar with them, let me explain it in just a minute. Basically, you have this pack, you have two chemical components. One is in the form of granulates, the other one is a liquid inside a little bag inside. Doing as it so clearly states here, you squeeze until you burst that little bag with the liquid inside, then you mix it very quickly and instantly it becomes very, very cold. That's why, ice pack becomes very cold, like as if it had been in the freezer. So you have a little bag full of ice or very cold liquid in there. That can be handy in so many cases that I think you should add this. Examples of that. If you have kids, do you have kids? Well, I do. Your kids get hurt, they fall over their head pretty often, and they get bumps in the head and such. No big deal most of the time, but ice does help. Sometimes in your vehicle, when you're out there and you're not close to home, you don't have ice to take care of that. And it may be nothing, but even if it's nothing, a cold pack, an ice pack like this one will avoid some of the more ugly swelling on the head, that bump in the head. And even if it's a more complicated, a harder impact to the head, you may be avoiding to some degree the internal pressure that may be building up. So it's very important. Another example, if you have been watching, you see these movies, Hollywood movies, where people get beaten to hell in their faces and they just look like having little red markings. Well, little difference. In the real world, when you get beaten up in your face gets all inflated like a balloon, all swollen because of the trauma to your face. Your face gets very, very, it's like like an inflated balloon in the area where you got hit. Usually that's what happens when someone beats you up in the face. In that case, you avoid some of that swelling by adding cold packs or ice packs like these. Another example, if you have a child with a very high fever and there's no way of lowering it, or you use some of the medicine that you may have in your first aid kit, you use ibuprofen or paracetamol, and that kind of thing, or Advil, the commercial names and such. Now that's all great, but if you need to reduce the temperature very fast in a kid because of a very high fever, something like this is important. You know, applying it to the forehead, that's going to be making quite a bit of a difference, and it's instantly going to be reducing the temperature, right? So just a few examples, a few very clear examples of when this is going to be of use. Very important stuff to have. Basically, what I would be using it for example, if you have even a broken bone or something like that, and maybe you break your arm, you use a splint of some sort, but then you put the ice pack, you activate it, and you wrap it with a shemagh like this or some other cloth so as to insulate as much as possible. Let's suppose you break your fingers, you put a SAM split, something there, you put the pack close to wherever it is that you broke yourself, and you insulate it as much as possible so as to get the most effect from that ice pack. Doctors say that all the time. The best thing when there's serious trauma, one of the best things you can do is apply cold packs, ice, apply lots of ice so as to avoid some of the more complicated outcomes. You know, so it's the kind of thing that does make a lot of sense, and you will rarely find it in the more typical commercial in the more typical commercial first aid kits. You know, one more thing to keep in mind. There's also those sprays like these ones that you see it used by athletes. You know, it does get the area very cold fast, but it doesn't last very long. For something like wounds or trauma, that sort of thing, ice packs are definitely a good thing to have around. Folks, one more little piece of information for you guys to consider, keep in mind. So consider subscribing if you're liking these videos. Take care, have a good day, and see you in the next video.